Kanye West's recent music video for Heaven and Hell doubles as a commercial for his new clothing line, Yeezy Gap. In this video, Kanye, now legally just Ye, pulls from imagery based on Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy, a three-part poem that traverses the three realms of the spirit called Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso. If you are aware of my Substack, you will notice that I published an article in October of 2021 which referenced Kanye's recent album and its relationship to the Divine Comedy. Those connections become very apparent in this music video. See? After the beat drops, Ye features 19th century images by Gustave Doré, who based an entire series of woodcut engravings on Dante's Divine Comedy. Many copies of the Divine Comedy include Gustave Doré's engravings, which were completed over 500 years after the poetic work on which they're based. However, the images Ye references are based on Paradiso, meaning Kanye skipped over Dante's Purgatorio and went straight from hell to heaven. Here, Kanye's CGI recreations purposefully mirror Doré's engraving of Dante's description of heaven. In Paradiso Canto 31, Dante describes the celestial rose, a circular dance of divine souls which itself may have been based on a relatively recent development in Gothic cathedrals known as the rose window. As Kanye loves to do, he imitates art, imitating art, imitating art. One could say this is a sure way for Kanye to know that his own art has staying power, because it's based on other works which still carry cultural weight. Besides referencing acclaimed works of art, there is something purposeful to Kanye's placement in the center of the celestial rose. He is taking the place of Dante Alighieri, who himself wrote the Divine Comedy as a statement of his artistic greatness and spiritual authority. In his trilogy, Dante challenges the many authoritative figures of his day, including the Catholic Church and ruling politicians. He does this on the grounds that God has granted him divine perspective by a spirit-led journey through hell, purgatory, and heaven. Kanye takes this initiative to the extreme, claiming himself the greatest artist, living or dead.
I am unquestionably, undoubtedly, the greatest human artist of all time. It's just not even a question anymore.
And a spiritual leader who has his own out-of-body experience to brag about.
Most insane out-of-body experience.
All of this raises the question of Kanye's plans. What does an excessively wealthy and admittedly good artist want to do with his immense influence? Why is he convincing us of his spiritual power? The key to these questions lies in the last 20-ish seconds of the video, which feature a reinterpretation of John Martin's 19th century engraving, The Fall of Babylon. Here Kanye inserts his masked and hooded figures from the beginning of the video. This engraving, however, is not based on the Divine Comedy, but takes inspiration from the biblical story about the fall of Babylon in the book of Genesis. In that story, early civilization builds toward heaven without regard to God. The city of Babel is struck down and its citizens are scattered, creating the diversity of language that divides communication today. It would seem that Ye is commenting on modern civilization in its relation to ancient Babel. To investigate this, we return to the Babylon imagery at the beginning of the video. We first see apartment buildings in the inner city. The opening lyrics sample a 1975 song. Children growing, women producing, men go work and some go stealing. Everyone's got to make a living. As these lyrics establish the theme, people wearing Kanye's all-black Yeezy clothing carry on their daily lives. These are the residents of Babylon, and as we see at the end of the video, they suffer under its downfall, but aren't responsible for commanding its construction. Once the beat drops, Ye depicts himself in a position of spiritual authority, bringing down the wicked city that oppressed so many people like himself. This narrative is an extension of Ye's beliefs on free thought and how spatial design can encourage or discourage one's growth. Ye is vehemently against conformity. Much of his philosophy centers around the fact that he does not want to be pigeonholed as just a producer, or just a rapper, or just a musician.
Then a lot of people say, okay, well, you have to do music. I'm gonna keep doing music, but what if people told me I couldn't rap? What would have happened? What if people told me I couldn't perform? I'm only 36 years old. I have other goals and other things, and I'm gonna use my platform, every platform, to stand up and say, I wanna make something.
He speaks out on this point quite often, and it points to some deeper beliefs about our constructed world and how it spatially encourages conformity. In 2019, Kanye purchased about 4,000 acres of land in Wyoming. There he explored different modes of living, which were foundationally against the rectangular prismatic shape.
The work that our architectural team has been working on with James Terrell and Claudio Silvestri to create spaces that allow humans to maximize our potential, to take us out of the box. Literally and figuratively, we live in boxes. We leave the womb when we're born and get put directly into the tomb. We get put directly into our first square space, which is the beginning of us going from being multi-dimensional and completely imaginative to placed onto a grid. Those boxes are those grids. First it starts off at the crib, then we go to schools where that's a box, then we go to higher learning a lot of times, that's a box, and then we end up at a job where we're working inside of a box, and then we do that to try to buy a crib, actually, and then we, have children and then put our children in a crib.
It would seem that his Heaven and Hell video is a continuation of this concept, addressing the suppression of the economically disadvantaged through a confining narrative. The Babylon imagery later in the video rings parallel to the earlier shots of actual American cities. Kanye's placement in this video then portrays him as the prophet ordained to free those in the inner city from an economically optimized yet confined residence that is an extension of confined thinking. While his philosophy does get a little extreme for me, I do agree that the design of modern cities unnecessarily divides and compartmentalizes daily life. I wouldn't mind living in a hobbit hole, but the subversive and authoritarian nature of his message is more than a little troubling. Ye is now one of the only black billionaires in the world, a fashion mogul producing for Gap and Adidas, and a hip-hop icon. He seems to relish in accomplishing far-fetched goals and idolizes empire builders such as Steve Jobs and Walt Disney. Perhaps he does have some good ideas, and perhaps we do need more diverse representation in the inner circles that have remarkable control over our daily lives. However, I do worry that we may be seeing the rise of another American supervillain who is obsessed with design and control.
But eventually you can transform Mars into an Earth-like planet. Just drop thermonuclear weapons over the poles.
You're a supervillain!
Is there any real progress coming from those who have mastered playing the world's games? I'm not so sure. But whatever, I'll buy a Yeezy hoodie.